The unread story is not a story. It is little black marks on wood pulp. The reader reading it makes it live. A live thing. A story. Ursula K. Le Guin. I don't do tags very often anymore, but I saw Krista at Books and Jams doing this one and it reminded me how much I enjoy this tag, so I decided to do it. I love looking back at the year so far and looking ahead at what is to come. I will link Krista's video down below as well as all the questions for this tag, and if you haven't done this tag yet and you want to, consider yourself tagged. The first question is the best book that you have read so far this year. And this question is just evil. I mean, you have to pick a favorite book. So instead of picking just one, I have two. They're very different in the type of book that they are. The first one is Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson, and this one was so just inspiring to me and heart-wrenching, and I felt very almost life-changing. And it's a nonfiction book about Bryan Stevenson. It's a memoir. He's been a lawyer for over 20 years for people on death row. And then the second one that I picked was The Off-Limits Rule by Sarah Adams. And Sarah Adams, I have loved her books so far. This is an adult rom-com, and I just absolutely loved the characters. I loved the plotline. I loved everything about the book, and it was more of a light read, but I had to include it because it has been one of my top favorite books of the year so far. The second question is the best sequel that you have read so far this year. For this one, I picked The Glamourist by Luann G. Smith. And this one, the first one is The Vine Witch in the series, and there's 3 books in the series, and The Vine Witch is about basically like vineyards but with witches. And even though I'm not like super into wine or vineyards or anything, I really loved the book. Thought the magic system and the world building was really cool. But then the sequel I actually loved even more, and of the third book as well, I actually loved the second book the absolute most. It has a little bit of like a mystery in there. I love the main character that we follow, and it has again really cool magic and world building, and if you enjoy stories about witches that aren't too dark or anything, then this is going to be a really good one. Question 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet but that you want to. And I've recently started trying to keep better track of new releases. I don't do the best job, and I'm still working on kind of figuring out a system for it. But I do have a couple that I'm really looking forward to that have already come out that I haven't gotten to yet. The first one came out in January, and it's called The Mystery of Mrs. Christie by Marie Benedict. As far as I can tell, this is a historical fiction about the time that Agatha Christie disappeared, those like mysterious 10 days or however long it was that she disappeared and no one knew where she went. And I have really been loving Agatha Christie books, especially recently. I've been reading a lot more of them because of the Agatha Christie challenge, which I'll link down below as well. And so I just thought it just sounds really interesting to me. I also really love mystery books, and I wonder if it will have kind of the mystery element since it has mystery in the name and stuff. We'll see how much of that is in there. The second one is actually a mystery book, and it came out in April, and it's called Pride and Premeditation by Tirzah Price. And it's an Pride and Prejudice retelling that is a murder mystery, and how could I not read that? I love Jane Austen, and I love mysteries and murder mystery books, and so I'm really hoping to really enjoy this one. Question 4 is my most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And I feel kind of, it's just funny because I feel like every single time I do this tag, I always say a Brandon Sanderson book, but it is always my most anticipated release because he usually does releases in November. This year he is releasing Skyward 3. I think the current title is Nowhere, but I think he said that it will probably change or could change or something like that. But he has finished it and gotten it to the editor, and it is on track for a November release this year, and so I am excited for that. A little bit disappointed that he went to Skyward before finishing up the 4th Wax and Wayne book, but still excited. And then after next year, we can get the Wax and Wayne book. Number 5 is your biggest disappointment so far this year, and for me that was High Society by Ali Carter. And I have been in like this huge heist kick. I love watching heist movies. I've watched Ocean's 11 like 20 times with a few different people. Like every time we're like, what should we watch? I'm like, have you seen Ocean's 11? Let's watch it together. And my husband and I have tried pretty much any heist movie that we can find that's not rated R, because we don't watch rated R movies. And some of them have been really good and some not so good. And I really wanted to read some heist books. And of course, I've read Mistborn, which is like a heist fantasy, and also Six of Crows, which is another heist fantasy. But I wanted to read like an actual heist book. And everyone said that Heist Society was basically Ocean's 11, but a YA book. And so I was really excited for it. And it was not Ocean's 11. Don't know that I would even call it a real heist book. It was like basically a con artist girl who didn't want to be a con artist anymore, but then had to like save her father or something, traveling around the world to different places to stop someone else from doing a heist. And then they did pull off a heist, but it just really didn't work for me, and it was super boring, and it was a big disappointment. If you know of a good heist book, please let me know, because I will go and read it if you recommend it to me in the comments below. Number 6 is your biggest surprise. And for me, this is probably The Invention of Sophie Carter by Samantha Hastings. And the reason it was a big surprise to me, for some reason, I didn't know a lot about it, but the cover, I was like, something about the cover really made me not want to read the book. Made it seem like it was going to be kind of boring maybe. And I did eventually pick it up. I had it on my middle grade March, even though after reading it I would probably label it more YA than middle grade. But it was the very last book I read of the month where I was like, okay, I really need to read this. It's on my middle grade March TBR list. And so I did read it, but it was the very last book. I put it off till the very end, and then I absolutely loved it. Flew through it, cried and laughed, and loved the two main characters, who were both really strong in their own ways, and they're twin sisters, and both the romance plots really worked for me, and I absolutely loved everything about the book, which was really fun to enjoy it so much when I wasn't really expecting a lot from it. Question 7 is your favorite new, either debut or new to you, author. One of my new favorite authors this year that I've come across is Sherry L. Tapscott, and she has written some adult rom-coms. They're clean but steamy adult rom-coms, which is exactly what I like, where there's, they still have like the attraction there, but they don't actually describe sex and stuff. I have read 2 books by her, and I'm going to read a 3rd kind of novella by her at Christmas time. It's a Christmas one, and I really want to check out and see if she has more books, because both of them were just really fun, enjoyable, quick reads, exactly what I was looking for at the time, and I really liked her main characters, and the way that she had the romances play out I thought were both really fun. Question 8 is your newest fictional crush. This one was a little bit hard for me because I don't know that I actually get like crushes anymore on characters. Like obviously when I was a kid I was in love with like Char from Ella Enchanted, but I honestly don't really feel like I get a lot of I don't really have a lot of celebrity crushes. I tend to just really ship characters, like, oh, I really love these 2 characters together, rather than being like, oh yes, I'm in love with this character. But if I had to pick one, I would probably pick Drew from The Temporary Roomie by Sarah Adams, and that's another adult rom-com. It's a hate-to-love romance. Drew is he's attractive, he's a doctor, he is just so sweet, he cares about other people, he's a little bit uptight and orderly, but it kind of is a fun, like a flaw, but also a strength at the same time, and he's just a really sweet guy, and feels very real to me. And I honestly always love the main characters in Sarah Adams' books, but I also really, really love the romance and the love interest in her books as well. And that's why I just love her rom-coms, because just those 3 things, when you put them together and you love them, then they end up being a really good rom-com. Number 9 is your newest favorite character. And this one was a little bit hard too, so I just went to my list of books and I just started at the most recent that I read and ran up until I found a favorite character, since that will be my most recent favorite character, and I picked Delilah Bard from the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy. And Delilah Bard was my favorite character in the entire trilogy. I loved her spunk and her personality, her drive, and just the way that she was so confident around people, and some of the things that she does are just so hilarious to me. Number 10 was a book that made you cry, and I honestly cry so often during books, but one that I picked was As Bright as Heaven by Susan Meissner, and this one has a lot of heart-wrenching things. It takes place during the Spanish flu epidemic, and then follow some of the characters later in their life to see kind of how that affected them later in life. The sisters had very much a Little Women type of feel, and so my heart just went out to them, and the more I read, the more I liked them and loved them. Some of the things they went through were really heart-wrenching to me or made me really happy and did end up bringing me to tears. Number 11 is a book that made you happy. And again, a lot of books made me happy, but one that I picked for this question was One to Buckle My Shoe by Agatha Christie. And in this one, it starts off with Poirot going to the dentist, and for some reason it just cracked me up, and just every time I think of it, it just makes me so happy. And I don't even know why, but it's just, I really enjoyed the book. It was one of my favorite Agatha Christie books. The whole dentist plotline just cracked me up so much. Number 12 is the most beautiful book you have received or bought so far this year, and for this one I picked Wild Bird by Wendelin Van Draanen. Wendelin Van Draanen is one of my favorite authors, and I just thought that this cover was so beautiful, pretty simple, but I tend to like more simple covers, and I think that it just works so well. I honestly haven't actually bought a lot of actual physical copy books this year, and so it was a little bit harder to find one. And then number 13, the final question is, what books do you have left to read this year? And I will tell you, I have so many books that I want to read still this year. I have quite a few series that I want to finish. Pulling out my bullet journal for this. So some of the top ones that I want to read, I want to finish the Stolen Kingdom series. I have 2 left in that series. I want to read the Van de Beeker series. I only read the first one in that one. I want to finish the second Children of Blood and Bone, and then all of the series that I've started this year, I would love to finish those off as well. We'll see. I have 15 books left of the 36 on my 2021 TBR list. I'm not going to read them all off, but I have all of those that I want to read. I want to do at least one reread each month. I'm doing my Jane Austen marathon this year, and I still have Lady Susan, Mansfield Park, Northanger Abbey, and Sense and Sensibility to read there. And I also have a couple of other classics that I would really like to read this year: Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Oliver Twist, The Swiss Family Robinson, and Trumpet of the Swan. I want to read a couple more comic books. I probably want to finish off the Ultimate Spider-Man series that I started. And then I want to do at least one new release each month to make sure that I am keeping up on at least some new releases. And I want to do at least one read aloud with my kids each month throughout the end of the year. I also want to continue reading books that I find from AuthorTube that are more indie, and I also have this section in my bullet journal where I'm trying to read from some different authors. I'm doing the Agatha Christie challenge this year, and I am reading at least one of her books each month. I mean, obviously she has so many books that I'm not going to be able to finish them all this year, but if I can do at least one a month, that would be good. I only have 3 more books from Marissa Meyer and 4 more books from Jessica Day George, and then I'll have finished all of their books as well, so I would love to read those books before the end of the year. And then any from just readathons that I can do, and I also have, I try and read all of the books that I own at the beginning of the year. I try to read by the end of the year so that I'm caught up, so because then as the year goes on, I buy more books, so then at the beginning of the next year I have more books to read. It looks like I have 5 ebooks of those, 6 physical books, and 4 audiobooks of the books that I owned at the beginning of the year in January that I want to finish by the end of the year. And so that's a lot of books to read. We'll see how many I get to. So if you've done this tag or are planning on doing this tag, let me know in the comments below and I can go watch your video. I always love watching this tag video. And if you haven't done it, just let me know the answer to at least one of these questions for you in the comments below, and we can chat more about books. I would love to chat more and connect in that way. If you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe for lots of reading and writing content. If you want to follow my reading journey, I do post a review for every book I read on Goodreads, as well as all of my favorite books on Instagram, and I also post a lot more about my writing journey on Instagram. Those will be linked in the description box below. And thank you so much for watching my video. I will see you in the next one.